Hello, welcome to my Analyze and Debrief presentation. I'm Isabella Boscacci, and I'm going to walk you through our lesson and explain not just what we created, but also why we made some of the instructional choices that we did. And our lesson focused on kindergarten students learning about commemorative holidays and understanding the people and events that they honor. So, throughout this presentation, I'll also be connecting our lesson back to culturally responsive teaching, UDL, equity, assessment, and also instructional alignment. So, on this slide, we had to really, before we even started planning our lesson, we had to stop and think about who our students are. So looking at our demographic data from the S. Ben Benavides Elementary helped us realize that many of our students may be English learners, migrant students, or students from diverse cultural backgrounds. So instead of creating a super generic lesson about holidays, we wanted students to actually feel connected to our content. So we knew students probably already had experiences with celebrations and traditions at home. So we decided to use that as a strength. And this really helped shape our thinking because it reminds us that culturally responsive teaching starts with recognizing students' backgrounds as assets and not barriers. So moving on, we have our content standard. So at first, this standard seems pretty broad for kindergarten because it includes ideas like history and commemorative holidays. So one thing that we had to think about was how to make these ideas developmentally appropriate for young students. So kindergarten students are still building their vocabulary and their background knowledge. So instead of teaching the standard in like a textbook style way, we focused on helping the students make personal connections to the holidays that they already recognize. So we wanted students to understand that holidays are more than just decorations or food. The deeper purpose was helping students realize that holidays are help people remember important events, traditions, and individuals throughout history. So here we have our objective, and our learning objective asks students to identify the purpose of holidays and explain what those holidays honor, including a graphic organizer or using a graphic organizer. But while we were planning, we realized that the wording itself could be a barrier for kindergarten students, especially our English learners. So we decided to create a more student friendly version that simplified the language while still keeping the same meaning. So instead of using terms like commemorative, we focused on helping students explain why the holidays are important and what they help remember people, or how they help people remember. One thing about the planning process that it really taught me is how important the alignment is. So every discussion, activity, a sentence frame, and assessment had to intentionally support the students in reaching the exact objective. And it made me realize that lesson planning is kind of like building, where every step reaches a final goal. So on this slide, we have some of our essential questions, some barriers and solutions, as well as our materials. So one of the first the barriers that we noticed was vocabulary. So instead of just defining the words and moving on, we have built in visuals and gestures. So our pictures on the holidays show different holidays in English as well as in Spanish underneath. So when we get to the end of the presentation, I will show you what the example looks like. But yeah, so we decided to translate that. And we also tried to focus on accessibility. So we're using the visuals not only, but also our notebook LM video, which will be used at the very beginning of our lesson, which I'll talk about on the next slide. And we also incorporated translanguaging practices by allowing the students to use their home language during the discussions if needed, instead of treating, bilingualism like a problem. We wanted students to feel comfortable using any language. So here is our engage open section. So this is where we're getting students emotionally and also personally connected to the lesson before we start introducing deeper concepts. So we start with a turn and talk discussion where students share the holidays that they celebrate at home. And then we use visuals and our notebook LM video to build the background knowledge. And our notebook LM video is interactive with students so that students don't feel like their attention span is not, or they can't focus. We made the video intentionally interactive as well. So, one thing that I really liked about this section is that we weren't trying to immediately just throw facts at students. Instead, we're trying to generate some curiosity and giving the students the space to connect their experiences to our content. So here is some of our dialogue throughout the Engage Open after they view the video as a group. And then we start moving into our practice section. So this section is all about the guided thinking, and we used Valentine's Day as a model because it's familiar and easy for students to connect to. But instead of just saying, Valentine's Day means love, we modeled the actual thinking process. We asked questions like, what does the holiday help us remember, and why do we celebrate it? So I think this part really reflects about what we've learned about higher order thinking. Even with kindergarten students, you can still guide them toward reasoning and explaining and making connections instead of only just being able to recall information. So here is some of our teacher talk during the practice section, where we use those frames and models. And moving into our body section, where the students are going to become more independent and collaborative in this section. So the students are working independently to create their worksheet, which is our summative assessment. And I'll show you the worksheet again at the end, like I said. And during this section, the students are working independently and they're trying to match holidays and explain what they honored. And one thing that we intentionally focused on here was student-centered learning. So the teachers are circulating and supporting students, but we're trying not to immediately just jump in with the answers. Instead, we're trying to encourage the students to discuss the ideas, ask questions, and also help each other throughout. And moving into our evaluation and close, we decided to use formative assessments throughout the entire lesson. And in our evaluation close section, we are asking questions to make sure they understand. The student, we're as a group, we're having this discussion to wrap up our lesson and make sure we have the understanding that we need. So moving on to the end. So here is our worksheet that we have put in place, as well as our Google Images. So like I said, we translated our holidays to Spanish as well, because of a lot of our students are Spanish speaking students. And we also created this worksheet as a whole. So they have recognition based off of what they're seeing, and they're able to match the correct holiday to what they're seeing. And then we also give them a chance to talk about a holiday that they want to talk about. It can be any holiday that they want, so that they feel connected to it as well. They understand why they celebrate it, because, and then they write their answer and why it's important. And then at the end, they're drawing a picture of their holiday. In addition to our summative assessment hitting all of our learning objective points, we also wanted to incorporate fine motor skills development, which is why they are cutting during the top section. So overall, the lesson planning process has really helped me realize how interconnected everything is in instruction. So the assessment, the equity, student engagement, and the classroom culture all are influencing each other. And one of the biggest takeaways that I had was that effective teaching isn't just about creating fun activities, it's about intentionally designing experiences and learning experiences that are accessible and meaningful for the students' needs.